August 30th, 1800. 6 miles outside Richmond, Virginia. The sun is setting. Gabriel stands in a clearing surrounded by nearly 1,000 men, blacksmiths, field workers, hired laborers, all of them enslaved, all of them armed, swords forged from scythe blades, spears hammered in secret, musket balls cast in the dead of night. Gabriel is 24 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, a blacksmith by trade. He can read, he can write. For months he has been planning what no one in Virginia believes possible. Tonight they march on Richmond. The plan is precise. 3 columns will enter the city. The first seizes the state armory, the second captures the powder magazine, the third takes Governor James Monroe hostage. They will hold the capital of Virginia until the state agrees to end bondage forever. Gabriel has prepared a silk banner for the march. On it he has written 3 words: death or liberty. The same words Patrick Henry spoke 25 years ago when white Virginians demanded their freedom from Britain. Now Gabriel demands the same. But the sky is darkening, not from sunset, from something else. Clouds are building in the west. The air grows heavy. The wind picks up. Gabriel watches the horizon. His men watch him. 1,000 lives hang on what happens in the next few hours. If they succeed, they change history. If they fail, every man standing in this clearing will hang. The first drops of rain begin to fall. What Gabriel does not know is that 2 men in his network have already betrayed him. A rider is heading toward Governor Monroe at this very moment. The largest organized rebellion in Virginia history is about to collide with the worst rainstorm in years. To understand what Gabriel was attempting, you need to understand what white Virginians believed about the people they held in bondage. They believed organization was impossible, not difficult, impossible. How could people scattered across hundreds of plantations communicate? How could people forbidden to read or write pass messages? How could people watched every hour of every day plan anything in secret? White Virginians had built a system designed to prevent exactly what Gabriel was attempting. They controlled movement. They controlled information. They controlled every aspect of life for the 400,000 black people living in Virginia in 1800. And they were confident it worked. The idea that 1,000 men could organize across 10 counties, forge weapons, develop military strategy, and coordinate an assault on the state capital seemed absurd. Enslaved people lacked education, lacked resources, lacked the sophistication for such an operation. At least, that is what white Virginia told itself. What they did not understand about Gabriel would terrify them. Gabriel was not an ordinary field worker. He was a blacksmith, skilled labor. His owner hired him out to work in Richmond, which meant Gabriel moved freely between the plantation and the city. He met other craftsmen. He listened to political debates. He watched how white Virginians conducted business. And he learned. Gabriel studied the American Revolution. He understood that 25 years earlier, white colonists had used the same arguments he now embraced. Liberty, equality, the right of all men to be free. Patrick Henry had stood in a Virginia church and declared, "Give me liberty or give me death." Gabriel simply asked the obvious question. Why did those words apply to white men but not to black men? He found others who asked the same question, his brothers Solomon and Martin, a powerful man named Jack Bowler, recruiters who spread across the countryside, whispering in fields and forges. The network grew. 10 people became 50. 50 became 200. 200 became 500. By August, Gabriel had organized men across 10 counties and 3 cities: Richmond, Norfolk, Petersburg. The largest conspiracy in Virginia history, built entirely through word of mouth. Gabriel studied military tactics. He designed a 3-pronged assault on Richmond. He identified which buildings to capture first. He calculated how many weapons they could seize from the state armory. He even knew which white people to spare: Quakers, Methodists, Frenchmen, anyone who had spoken against bondage. He forged swords from scythe blades. The tools of their oppression became the weapons of their liberation. His blacksmith shop produced nearly 150 blades. Other conspirators made spears, cast musket balls, gathered what firearms they could find. All of this happened under the noses of white Virginians who believed such organization was impossible. The obstacles were overwhelming. No formal communication system, no maps, no military training, no supply lines, just faith in each other and a willingness to die for freedom. Against them stood the Virginia State Militia, professional soldiers with cannons and cavalry, a legal system designed to execute rebels slowly and publicly, a network of informants paid to betray their own people. No enslaved person had ever captured a state capital. No rebellion had ever succeeded in Virginia. The last major uprising, the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina 60 years earlier, had been crushed within days. But Gabriel believed 1800 was different. The United States Army had just disbanded its local regiment. Richmond was nearly undefended, and he had 1,000 men ready to march. Tonight, he would prove white Virginia wrong about everything. The rain begins as a drizzle. Within an hour, it becomes a downpour. Within 2 hours, it becomes the worst storm Virginia has seen in years. Gabriel watches the sky open up. Water floods the dirt roads. Creeks swell into rivers. The bridge they need to cross into Richmond washes away entirely. 1,000 men stand in the darkness, soaked to the bone, waiting for orders. Gabriel faces an impossible choice: march through the flood and risk losing half his men before they reach the city, or wait until morning and pray the storm passes. He chooses to wait. They will regroup tomorrow night. The plan is delayed, not defeated. But Gabriel does not know what has already happened. 2 men in his network have betrayed him. Tom and Pharaoh, held by a man named Mosby Shepherd, have told their enslaver everything: the target, the timing, the leaders. At this very moment, a rider is galloping through the storm toward Governor James Monroe. By morning, the militia is mobilizing. Gabriel wakes to chaos. Word spreads through the network. They have been discovered. Soldiers are arresting men across the countryside. The conspiracy is unraveling. Some men scatter into the woods. Some return to their plantations and pretend ignorance. Some are caught on the roads, still carrying weapons. Gabriel runs. He makes his way east toward the Chickahominy River. His plan is to reach Norfolk, find a ship, and escape Virginia entirely. Perhaps he can reach the north. Perhaps he can find passage to Haiti, where black men have overthrown their oppressors and built their own nation. For 3 weeks, Gabriel evades capture. 3 weeks while Virginia tears itself apart searching for him. 3 weeks while his brothers and fellow conspirators are dragged into courtrooms and sentenced to death. Governor Monroe offers a $300 reward, a fortune in 1800, enough money to change any man's life. Gabriel reaches Norfolk. He finds a ship, the Mary, and convinces the captain to hide him. For a moment, it seems he might escape. The ship prepares to sail. Freedom is within reach. Then another betrayed him. An enslaved crewman named Billy recognizes Gabriel, recognizes the reward. On September 23rd, he turns Gabriel over to the authorities. Gabriel is chained and transported back to Richmond. The city he had planned to liberate now holds him prisoner. The armory he had planned to capture sits untouched. The governor he had planned to take hostage will now decide his fate. Gabriel is brought before the court on October 6th. The trial is brief. The evidence is overwhelming. Dozens of witnesses testify against him. His own recruits describe the plan in detail. The swords, the spears, the silk banner with its 3 defiant words. The verdict is predetermined, guilty of conspiracy and insurrection. The sentence is death. But Gabriel refuses to break. Throughout his interrogation, he says nothing that would betray any man who has not already been captured. He gives them no new names, no new locations, no information they do not already possess. They ask him to confess, to beg for mercy, to denounce his cause. Gabriel remains silent. 1,000 men had followed him. 26 will hang for it, but none will hang because Gabriel betrayed them. On October 10, 1800, Gabriel is led to the Richmond gallows. He is hanged first, alone, before the others. The authorities want him to watch nothing, to gain no satisfaction from seeing his men die with courage. They are afraid of him even now. The courtroom falls silent when Gabriel speaks. For days, the trials have followed the same pattern. Witness after witness testifying against the accused. Confessions extracted through threats and promises of mercy. Men breaking under pressure, giving names, begging for their lives. Gabriel gives them nothing. He stands before 5 justices, no jury, no real defense. The outcome was decided before he entered the room. But Gabriel did not come to win his case. He came to make a statement. The prosecutor presents the evidence. The swords forged in Gabriel's shop. The testimony of Ben Woolfolk, who described the silk banner with its inscription. The detailed plan to capture the armory, the powder magazine, the governor himself. Gabriel does not deny any of it. When given the chance to speak, he does not plead, does not weep, does not beg for the mercy that saved some of his co-conspirators. Instead, he offers words that will echo through history. He compares himself to George Washington. The statement is not recorded in Gabriel's own voice. He was not permitted to write his own account. But witnesses remember what one of the condemned men said, words that captured what Gabriel and his followers believed. I have nothing more to offer than what General Washington would have had to offer, had he been taken by the British and put to trial by them. I have adventured my life in endeavouring to obtain the liberty of my countrymen, and am a willing sacrifice in their cause. The courtroom understands exactly what this means. 25 years earlier, Washington had led an armed rebellion against lawful authority. He had organized men in secret. He had seized weapons. He had fought for the principle that all men possessed natural rights that no government could take away. Washington became the father of his country. Gabriel did the same things for the same reasons. The only difference was the color of his skin. The justices do not acknowledge the comparison. They cannot. To admit that Gabriel's cause had any legitimacy would be to admit that the entire system of bondage was built on a lie, that the words of the Declaration of Independence applied to all men, not just white men. So they sentence him to death and move on to the next case. But Gabriel has already won something they cannot take from him. He has forced them to see him, not as property, not as a tool, not as something less than human, but as a man who understood liberty well enough to die for it. A man who could organize an army, plan a military campaign, and stand before his executioners without flinching. The same white Virginians who insisted that black people lacked intelligence now had to explain how one of them nearly captured their capital. The same politicians who claimed bondage was natural now had to admit they were terrified of the people they held in chains. Gabriel's dignity in that courtroom was its own kind of victory. He did not grovel. He did not renounce his beliefs. He did not give them the satisfaction of seeing him broken. On October 10, 1800, Gabriel walks to the gallows with his head held high. He is 24 years old. He has been enslaved his entire life. He will die without ever tasting freedom, but he will die knowing that 1,000 men believed in his vision, that he came within one rainstorm of changing history, that his name will be remembered long after his executioners are forgotten. They hang him first, alone, before the sun fully rises. Even at the end, they are afraid to let him stand with his men. Gabriel never captured Richmond. His army never marched through the capital streets. Governor Monroe was never taken hostage. By any military measure, the rebellion failed before it began. But Gabriel won something the gallows could not take away. He proved them wrong. For generations, white Virginians had insisted that the people they held in bondage were incapable of sophisticated thought, could not plan, could not organize, could not conceive of liberty in any meaningful way. The entire justification for the system rested on this assumption. Gabriel shattered it completely. 1,000 men, 10 counties, 3 cities, a military plan with multiple objectives, a network of recruiters who spread the conspiracy through word of mouth alone, weapons forged in secret, a silk banner proclaiming the same principles white Virginians celebrated every 4th of July. All of this built by a man who was legally considered property. The numbers tell the story of white Virginia's terror. 72 men arrested, 26 executed by hanging, 8 sold away to distant states, 13 pardoned by Governor Monroe, 25 acquitted only because the evidence against them was insufficient. This was not the response of a confident society. This was panic. John Randolph, one of Virginia's most prominent politicians, visited the prisoners before their executions. What he saw shook him to his core. He wrote that the accused had exhibited a spirit which, if it becomes general, must deluge the southern country in blood. They manifested a sense of their rights and contempt of danger, and a thirst for revenge which portend the most unhappy consequences. Read those words carefully. A sense of their rights. White Virginia was being forced to acknowledge that black people understood liberty, understood justice, understood that they were being denied what the Constitution promised to all men. That recognition terrified them more than any army could have. The Virginia legislature responded with fear, not confidence. They passed new laws restricting the movement of black people. They banned hiring out skilled workers who might travel too freely. They made it illegal to teach reading and writing. They prohibited black men from piloting boats, afraid they might learn too much about the outside world. Every new restriction was an admission. If the people they held in bondage were truly incapable of organization, why fear their literacy? If they were truly content, why restrict their movement? If they were truly inferior, why did the entire state mobilize to stop one blacksmith's plan? The laws proved what Gabriel had demonstrated. Black Virginians possessed the intelligence, the courage, and the determination to fight for their freedom. The only thing keeping them in chains was overwhelming force. Gabriel's conspiracy also proved something else. The system was not stable. One rainstorm had saved Richmond. One betrayal had unraveled the network. But what about next time? What about the next Gabriel, who might choose a clear night? Who might keep his circle smaller? Who might succeed where Gabriel had failed? White Virginia would never sleep peacefully again. In Southampton County, 31 years later, an enslaved preacher named Nat Turner would answer that question. Turner knew Gabriel's story. Every black Virginian knew Gabriel's story. It passed from generation to generation, whispered in fields and cabins, proof that resistance was possible. Gabriel lost the battle, but he planted a seed that would grow for decades. A seed of fear in white minds, a seed of hope in black hearts, and seeds, once planted, cannot be unplanted. Governor James Monroe faced a problem he had never anticipated. The same man who would later become the 5th President of the United States now sat in Richmond, surrounded by prisoners awaiting execution, forced to reckon with what Gabriel had revealed about Virginia. Monroe was no abolitionist. He held people in bondage himself. But he was also a practical politician, and what he saw in those prison cells disturbed him deeply. These were not the ignorant, docile creatures that Virginia's laws described. These were men who understood exactly what they had attempted and why. Men who compared themselves to Washington without irony. Men who faced death with dignity that unnerved their captors. Monroe wrote to Thomas Jefferson, seeking guidance. His letter reveals the conflict tearing at Virginia's leadership. Where should they stay the hand of the executioner? How many hangings would be enough? How many would be too many? Jefferson's response was telling. He worried about the spectacle of mass execution, not because he questioned the justice of it, but because he feared how it would look to the outside world. The new American Republic, founded on principles of liberty, hanging dozens of men for wanting the same thing. The executions continued, 26 men hanged in total. But Monroe eventually stopped the killing. He pardoned 13 conspirators. He allowed 25 to be acquitted, not from mercy, but from exhaustion. Virginia had made its point. More blood would only create more martyrs. But the recognition Gabriel forced went deeper than courtroom decisions. White Virginians could no longer pretend the system was stable. A newspaper essayist captured the new reality when he wrote that no person could repose in security and safety. The comfortable assumption that bondage was natural, accepted, permanent, had been exposed as fantasy. The Virginia legislature acknowledged this fear through action. They did not debate whether black people could organize. Gabriel had answered that question. Instead, they debated how to prevent it from happening again. New laws poured forth. Restrictions on movement, restrictions on assembly, restrictions on literacy, restrictions on hiring out skilled workers. Every law an admission that the people they held in bondage were dangerous precisely because they were capable. The political impact spread beyond Virginia. Federalists used Gabriel's conspiracy to attack Thomas Jefferson during the presidential election of 1800. They claimed that Republican talk of liberty and equality had inspired the rebellion. That dangerous ideas about human rights had filtered down to people who were never meant to hear them. Jefferson won the election anyway. But the accusation contained a truth that white America preferred not to examine. The words of the Declaration of Independence were dangerous. They applied to everyone, or they applied to no one. Gabriel had simply taken them seriously. In the years that followed, Gabriel's name became a symbol. White Virginians used him as a warning, proof that vigilance was necessary, that the system required constant enforcement. Black Virginians remembered him differently, as proof that resistance was possible, that one man could organize an army, that the spirit of liberty lived in their community. 207 years after his execution, Virginia finally offered its official recognition. On August 30, 2007, Governor Tim Kaine granted an informal pardon to Gabriel and all his co-conspirators. The state that had hanged him acknowledged that his cause was just, that his fight for freedom represented the highest American values, that he deserved to be remembered not as a criminal, but as a patriot. The pardon came 2 centuries too late for Gabriel, but it proved that history eventually recognizes the truth. Gabriel's body was buried in an unmarked grave. The authorities wanted him forgotten. They wanted his name to fade from memory, his conspiracy to become a footnote, his cause to die with him on the gallows. They failed. Within months of the executions, Gabriel's story spread beyond Virginia. Newspapers across the country reported on the conspiracy. Abolitionists in the North pointed to Richmond as proof that black Americans would never accept bondage. Politicians debated what the rebellion meant for the future of the Republic. The story refused to die because the truth it revealed could not be buried. In 1802, another conspiracy emerged in Virginia. A man named Sancho, who had participated in Gabriel's original network, organized his own rebellion along the James River. The authorities crushed it and executed 25 more men. But the pattern was clear. Gabriel had started something that would not stop. 31 years later, Nat Turner launched his rebellion in Southampton County. Turner knew Gabriel's story. Every black Virginian knew Gabriel's story. It had become part of the oral tradition, passed down through generations, proof that resistance was not only possible, but had nearly succeeded. Turner's rebellion killed 60 white Virginians and forced the state legislature to debate abolishing bondage entirely. The vote failed by only 7 votes. But the debate happened because men like Gabriel had made the question impossible to ignore. Black writers preserved Gabriel's memory when white historians tried to erase it. Martin Delany referenced the conspiracy in his 1859 novel. Arna Bontemps wrote Black Thunder in 1936, telling Gabriel's story to a new generation. The name that Virginia wanted forgotten became a symbol of resistance across centuries. The civil rights movement of the 1960s reclaimed Gabriel alongside Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey. These men had fought for freedom long before the Emancipation Proclamation, long before the 13th Amendment, long before anyone believed change was possible. Their courage proved that the struggle had deep roots. In 2002, Richmond finally began to acknowledge what it had spent 2 centuries denying. The city installed a historic marker at the site where Gabriel was believed to have been hanged. The marker does not call him a criminal, it calls him a freedom fighter. In 2007, Governor Tim Kaine issued an informal pardon to Gabriel and all 25 men executed with him. The proclamation stated that Gabriel's cause was just and that his struggle for freedom represented the highest ideals of the American Republic. 207 years. That is how long it took Virginia to admit the truth. Gabriel was right. The men who hanged him were wrong. The system he fought against was an abomination. The liberty he demanded was owed to every human being. Today, Gabriel's silk banner exists only in testimony. No physical artifact survives, but his 3 words endure: death or liberty. The same words Patrick Henry spoke to demand freedom from Britain. The same words that built a nation. Gabriel simply believed they applied to everyone. He was 24 years old when he died. He had been enslaved his entire life. He never tasted the freedom he fought for. He never saw his cause triumph. But Gabriel understood something his executioners did not. Ideas cannot be hanged. Courage cannot be buried. And the truth, once spoken, echoes forever. 1,000 men believed in his vision. 1 rainstorm stopped his march. 1 betrayal ended his life. But nothing could stop what he started.